What's up, everybody? Welcome to MN Viking Zombies horror movie reviews. I'm excited to be here. My name's Kyle Smith, and I'm here on behalf of the one and only Adam Carlson. Thank you for letting me come in again, man. I love when we do movie reviews together.
Yeah, it's been a little while, and to be honest, I was starting to miss doing these, so I'm glad that we were able to squeeze one in.
Same. Life's been hectic. I'm trying to find a house to buy in this crazy market, and work is crazy, but have some downtime today. And yeah, from the get-go, I was like, this seems like a cool change of pace film. We decided to go with Don't Kill Me. My apologies, I put 2022 in there originally, but I'm looking at IMDb, it says 2021.
Correct.
But it is a Netflix horror movie, and yeah, this is very interesting.
Yeah, it's an Italian film. It's a little bit of a twist on the zombie genre, which is, I always welcome a little bit of extra interest to it. And because let's be honest, the zombie genre, it can be kind of one note at times. Mm-hmm. So it was nice to see something a little bit different. But let's just go into a brief synopsis about what goes on here. So this girl meets this guy, and they meet at a club after seeing each other on the side of the road, and they start a relationship. The movie actually opens with the two of them in a car. They're driving down this winding road, and he's got his eyes closed, and she's giving him directions on how to drive. It's, I'll be kind of honest, it's a bad scene.
Yeah. It'll make you anxious, and it's just, I get the point that it's trying to drive forward, trying to drive home like young, crazy, and kind of stupid love. That's kind of what they're in. But definitely didn't prefer that scene. It seemed a little out of sorts for the rest of the film. But
the focus on the scene was on Marta.
Yes.
And she was
under her stress and duress. And you can clearly see from the get-go in this movie that these two personalities that end up being, in love together and fall in love together, they are oil and water, in my opinion. One is very reserved, one is very mischievous,
right?
And a little pursuant from the male character here, Robin, played by Rocco Fasano. Yeah, he's definitely a bad boy for sure.
Oh yeah, they drive out to this quarry, and they both try this drug that they drop in their eye, I guess.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting.
And it kills them. We see their parents mourning the girl's death, saying that the boy was a bad influence and everything. And then she chips her way out of her, what is that, mausoleum? Is that what that is?
Mm-hmm.
And there she is. She is undead now.
Yeah, that was a pretty pivotal part. That's what drew me in from the trailer. If you watch the trailer, it's not a traditional trailer you would see, here in the States, to where it's maybe 2.5 minutes. It's 1 minute, and it focuses a lot on this scene of a person kicking their way through a very thin kind of layered concrete or stone wall, and they're not dead. They've been buried, but they are not dead. So we think, like Adam said, we find out later she's part of the undead, and she has to figure out what she needs to do with her new life now. And it's so wild thinking about, it's almost like a parallel world, because they are physically here, but they have to hide, which is kind of cool because it gives like a vampire element to this movie too, which I really enjoy. And the revisiting of their homes, man, that was pretty emotional stuff. But as Adam was saying, going through this movie, the main character here is Myrta, and she's a wonderful actress here. Alice Pagani, she's beautiful. She's got great range in this movie, and she's just, you can feel her pain. And I think that the actress that does this movie, and for her part, is very well cast. She was very torn. She's a very innocent soul starting through this, but you can tell that she's in love, and she wants to explore these things, but she kind of gets forced at a different pace than she wants to. But anyways, she breaks out, and she immediately wants to go home to let her parents know she's not dead, but she runs into some problems seeing her mother struggle, kind of tiptoeing through the house, and she realizes that might not be the best idea. and that's when things get. It's a good pace through this movie. It gets kind of weird.
Well, the thing is that this film is very uh, Italian horror in that it's very moody, it's dark, it's a little different on the pacing. So if you're a fan of Italian horror films, this might be. Yeah, to this point, it's the movie. I don't know how to explain the way the pacing goes unless you kind of watch it. I don't think you'll really get a feel for it.
Mm-hmm.
But she runs from her mother's house when her dad gets home because for some reason she gets really freaked out and doesn't want her dad to see her. And then we get a weird sequence that I don't really understand fully, where she goes and she finds out her hands are decomposing and everything. And I guess when they feast, they regenerate their skin.
Yeah, this is basically for the zombie part of it. This is how they stay alive. Like I said, kind of the vampire element too. Not saying this is a vampire film, but they need sustenance, and their sustenance is, and she finds out pretty quickly that she has to kill people, and which we'll talk about at the very end of the movie, which is a really cool kind of explanation, which I don't really care for explanations, but I felt like this one was well placed. But yeah, like you said, she's finding her fingernails are turning black. It looks like she's dipped her hands into an ink pile, and she's like, what is happening? She's trying to figure it out, and she does a very good job portraying that in her acting. And she goes back to the club that Adam mentioned before, and she basically stalks out her first prey. And she doesn't do this intentionally to start because she's very confused. You can tell that she's sick, doesn't feel well, but she ends up finding her first victim there, which was pretty gnarly.
Yeah, she goes and picks up this kind of sleazy dude that was trying to pick up younger women, and he's like talking about how he's successful and all this stuff, and he was definitely there to prey on a young woman that night, and she decided to take him out to that spot out at the quarry where her and her boyfriend at the time did those drugs and passed away. So after some weird sequences there, they end up out there, and he is forcing himself on her, and she doesn't care for it. He pulls her up on his lap, and as he's trying to maintain some sexual superiority over her, she takes a big old bite out of his neck, and that's where she starts feasting.
Yeah, that was that scene in particular will turn the hair up on your neck because you see someone talking to a very vulnerable and very not healthy girl and trying to force drugs on her, trying to force himself on her, and it's kind of poetic justice. Seeing a guy and a character like that kind of get what he has coming, so he can't do this to anyone else. But she you can see the juxtaposition in her face of, oh my God, this is what I was looking for, and I didn't know this is what my new reality is. But she finds out she's gonna have to prey on people. That's how she's gonna keep her energy. And I had to maintain this. Like I had to do the skip a little bit to make sure I got this on time to get this in before we started. But I believe after that, doesn't she go back home again? And so she meets, she sees her father, correct? Or is this, that's a little bit later?
No, after this moment, this tips off everyone that she's around. So she runs into the woods, and she was getting chased by a group.
Yep.
And her kind exists.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I'm sitting there wondering, okay, so is this a common thing? But apparently it's a small group with a lot of resources. And she learns this after another woman of her kind gets her, sets her down, explains to her how to feast and not... They can't eat if they're dead in any way. So once the person passes away, that food is no good to them. So she takes her, and she wants to bring her to a facility where I guess there's a bunch of their kind.
Mm-hmm.
But she's not ready for that. She wants to go back to the graveyard, and she wants to meet up with her boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's not there, but his friend is. And that brings us to another scene where they're reminiscing and the friend tries pushing himself off on her a little bit. And that ends it in a weird way, too.
Yeah, it was one of the more unique deaths. You're talking about the gentleman with the dyed hair, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So this character here. Let's see if I can find him on. His photo is not up here. Um, this gentleman is part of the junkie crowd that we were talking about earlier when they first lock eyes on each other. There's a whole truck full of kids who are claimed junkies by Mirta and her friend, and he's always had a crush on Mirta, and he's trying to force himself into this situation. The intentions were good up until the point he was told no, and then he kind of tries to force himself on her, and she tries her best to say, "Hey, look, this is not going to end well," and you feel bad because you can see that she kind of cares for him too. Maybe not as intensely as he cares for her, but ultimately it turns into him overstepping the line. She kind of turns into and activates this evil side of her where she's like, I'm going to feast now. He had a leg up on this. He knew about this. And instead of, I mean, it was wild saying this out loud. Instead of getting eaten, he takes his own life with a razor blade to the throat. And it was a crazy kill.
Well, that and he said he wanted to come back so they could be together. And I thought that was kind of wild. But I did skip over the scene where she goes back to his apartment, her boyfriend's apartment, and her dad is there. And he said he's been paying her rent instead of trying to get her back home where she belongs, and how bad of an influence the boy was on her. And it was him and I'm assuming a woman that he was cheating on her mom with.
Right. And I don't know, I think we left this part out too, but her dad was visited by a person that we will see later in the film, early on in the film, that says, hey, your daughter's still out there. And of course he shuns him away, said, this is crazy. You're insulting my daughter's death. Please get out of here. And he finds out in the scene that you're talking about at the apartment that his daughter is still here, but not in a way that you would think. I'll let you segue that one. That was wild.
Well, Mirta ends up eating the dad's girlfriend, I guess. And then in comes the people that were hunting her, and they shoot her dad in the head, and they capture her. They bring her to this facility. Now, she had been warned that by the other woman that was going to take her to the safe house, that these people would hunt her down, that they had facilities all over the place. And she ends up in this room, chained up. And it's there that she reunites with her boyfriend.
Walking in, hey, you got to put it too, man. These people that are cast for here, especially the two main characters, Mirta and Robin, they're beautiful people. They're just great looking people. He walks in, just a handsome, handsome dude. And you're thinking,
see,
like,
you and I are kind of split here because you keep saying that, but at my age, I look at them and I was like, are these people 16? It was like really creepy to me that they were pushing a lot of the nudity and sexuality because it felt odd to me to watch. I felt creepy. I didn't like that.
We didn't add those scenes in to talk about them yet, but that's the only reason why I feel comfortable saying it, because obviously you can't put a minor on camera being nude. There, we'll put the disclaimer out there for this movie.
Well, she was 23 when she filmed The Actress. That's how creeped out I was, is that I Googled it.
Yeah, she does have a smaller frame. It does appear to be younger, but yeah, they push a lot of like sexuality, and they say it in the preview here, and they'll show you at the beginning of the movie.
Oh yeah, big warnings.
Big warnings there to tell you there's going to be sexual activity and nudity. They kind of push that home, which is kind of a European stamp, if I remember correctly. But yeah, he walks in, you can see her face change. It was a great moment, great acting by her. Just the face changes. They embrace each other, and the people that were hunting her down really let her off easy there, because I was like, I thought initially in that moment he was going to try to kill her.
Yeah, because that's what the boyfriend exchanged his life for, was to get her and have her with him, because that was what they wanted. That's what they agreed on. That's what they talked about at the quarry. But then we get the weird sex scene. Now, if your heart isn't beating and your body's cold, can zombie boners happen?
We hit the hard hitting questions here. Yeah,
And
that was wild.
will her parts work the way they're supposed to? Because they shouldn't.
It was, I give A for effort here for the interpretation, but they also have like I guess they have an elevated level of sex because they were staring at each other and moving like animals before they started too, which was really crazy. Um, but it was a cool, weird sentiment there where like even though they're undead, the love never stopped, which is an underlying theme throughout this movie. Is no matter how messed up the circumstances, these two are like, I guess they're supposed to be together.
But
And
their love at the beginning too was so toxic.
yeah, it's horrible. And like I said earlier, she's very pure. She's very innocent. He is definitely the bad boy. Definitely, he is the devil on the shoulder in almost every scenario here, if not all of them. But somehow they find their way back. He shows a little bit of compassion. He's carrying her back. He says, "Hey, look, I promised that we would be together." And that's where, after all the hot and heavy stuff is done, they have kind of an argument, and she's very upset because she's like, "I told you not to kill me." And he's like, "Well, we can't change it now, but now we're together forever." And it was
he intentionally killed her, knowing that they'd come back, and that did not sit well with her.
And at this point, you're probably 2/3 of the way into the movie. I saw the timing on it, and I was like, "Okay, cool. The gears are going to shift here. It's going to start driving fast." And yeah, this is basically when she makes the decision to go against them, and she leaves.
But on her way out, she finds that her friend, the one that helped her out and got her to the safe spot, she's the one that's upstairs caught and captured, and she can hear her being tortured, and you can tell she's been tortured for a while because she is very close to full zombie monster.
Yeah, she's in bad shape when Myrta finds her. And this is the same gentleman that spoke with her dad to let him know, like, "Hey, your daughter's still here with us. She's not the same." And yeah, she decides to attack him. He's kind of the ringleader. I would say he's probably the president of this little club here.
Yeah.
He's kind of the gang leader. And she saves her friend. They take care of him. And now they're pretty much two fugitives on the run.
But that whole sequence is weird, though. Because as they were escaping that cell, I mean, she took out 2 guards to get in the cell. I thought that's pretty cool, considering she's not a trained fighter of any sorts.
Yep.
Not bad. But then they do this weird old boy style hallway scene where she takes out probably 40 guys.
Yeah.
And it's like, when did she learn to fight?
And I know they're trying to drive the point home in this hall. It's a cool looking hallway. You can tell it was filmed in like a school or like a jail. Old tile walls that you would see in like a shower up on the regular walls on the hallway. And she's grabbing weapons, and you can see the eyes turn black. The whole point of this movie is once they take the drugs, they insert in their eyes turn black. That's how you know that they're the undead. It's kind of activated within her this whole movie. She can kind of get into a mood or out of a mood whenever she needs. I guess when she's hungry, if I had to take a guess now that I'm saying it out loud. But anyways, this was not motivated by hunger. This was motivated by anger. So it's kind of a self-defense thing too. And it's kind of an animalistic trait where she just goes through and plows through. And some of these are really cheesy, easy deaths.
Yes.
But some of them are pretty cool. She's beating people up with a pipe.
But it's not something a 22-year-old woman, with no martial arts training or fighting training would be able to do.
She's a very small woman too. So
and all these guys have weapons and they're running at her one at a time like a kung fu film.
It's funny.
It's kind of dumb.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they make it through the hallway. They get outside to the truck. And as the one woman's hot wiring it, Merita's confronted once again by her boyfriend, trying to convince her to stay and be with him. And she said she didn't choose that life and he had no right to choose for her. And that whole time she's holding him against the truck, she's getting shot in the back. And she pushes him down. She gets in the truck and they take off. That's how the movie ends.
Yeah, that was crazy. You could see the shift from her being very vulnerable and very innocent in the beginning, obviously when she was alive as a human, to now He tries to do the thing that made me uncomfortable with some of these parts too was he got very physical with her and not these are not good ways. He would grab her by the
No.
face, and it makes you really pissed off if you've ever had that in your life at any point. And he does it again. He tries to force his strength on her, and she turns it around, and you're kind of like, hell yeah, I'm rooting for her now. And you can see that it breaks her heart because she does have feelings for him. She does care for him, but ultimately she says, what you said, I didn't choose this. You made this for me. She ends up tasing him. He falls down, and the group of hunters, they take some shots of this van. But these two fugitives are on the run again. Two ladies who are undead. And I'm not sure. Did they go to Paris or some big city? They ended up there, and that was the final scene was
Yeah.
the explanation that I mentioned earlier was she's like, you're going to have to strategically figure out and hunt people. You have to blend in. You have to be unnoticed, and you have to do this very carefully. And that's it. Roll credits. And I kind of appreciated the abrupt ending. I didn't think that we needed the explanation because you could very well piece this together. There was not a lot of hidden stuff here, but
unless there was going to be a twist afterwards, I mean, that scene did feel unnecessary.
Yes,
for the explanation of the movie.
But overall, I mean, you're the zombie guy. I mean, it's in your name here and on your channel. I wanted to know what you thought of the take of the undead, and this was definitely a different little twist, but I enjoyed their interpretation of what they were trying to do, although there are definitely some holes in this film, which we will dissect here after our...
My one biggest question for this movie, after watching it, and while watching it, is how can a movie where so much interesting stuff happens be so outright boring?
Yeah.
I dragged through this movie. I wanted to like it. There was so many aspects of it that were kind of cool, but I had trouble finishing this movie.
I'll be honest with you, man. I was pressed for time, so I had a lot of those 10-second forwards there. A lot of 10-second forwards. Subtitles were on. I was absorbing it. I was eating. I'm with you. It had. Now,
I will say there was one thing I really loved about this film. I loved how they took the lack of dialogue and almost made that a character in itself, because most of this movie is through the eyes and the physical motions. This is not a dialogue-heavy movie. We've watched several movies on this channel that we were really excited about how the dialogue brought these characters to life and how these characters were able, or the actors were able to deliver these lines so well. This movie was the exact opposite. More of the story was told through body language, staging, and all that than through dialogue. And I thought that was a nice kind of welcome change, even if the movie wasn't my cup of tea.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there. Definitely, it was kind of sloppy. I guess it's the best way I would put it. They had good spots, maybe not pieced together as well as I wanted. A couple of scenes where you're like, come on, really? But I think the thing for me that I liked the most was I'm noticing more, especially in really good directors and in the horror genre, is how much lighting can affect the mood and the sense. You think about when they were alive, it looked like a normal day. Like I'm looking outside, I see a tree, I see grass, I see a fence. It's great lighting outside. But when they're dead, everything is somber. There's a cold blue tint to everything, as if like a dead body would be. There are shadows. And I greatly appreciated the lighting in this film a lot, because to your point, how the dialogue could have been a separate character, the lighting in this movie to me really set the mood for what you're going to experience. And it kind of set a tone you don't notice unless you try to pay attention to it a little bit. But I noticed it immediately once they were dead. She's going back home. I was like, why does it look? It almost looks like a different world. And I guess to her it was.
Now, they did jump around in time a bit to explain the relationship between these two, since they actually started with Merita's death. Now, some of that jumping around was interesting, showing how the two met up at the bar and everything like that. Some of it seemed unnecessary, like him watching her take a bath in a barrel.
Yeah. That's part of the warning that they lay for the sexual stuff and the nudity, is they drive that a little too hard in this movie. Didn't really need that. And it was you can feel there's going to be points in this movie at any point, could be multiple times, but at least once you're going to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that was unfortunately probably my biggest critique of the film was, okay, I get it. People are having sex. You don't have to do it. You know, like major motion pictures, they'll have maybe like a 30-second cap and it'll be one fade into another to another and then they're finished. No, they stay on this for a solid minute.
Yeah.
2 or 3 different times. And you're like, okay, I get it. I had to fast forward through that. I was a little uncomfortable, but overall,
Yeah.
I didn't hate the film. I thought the casting was good. I obviously mentioned the lighting. I loved your point about the dialogue. I like the attempt, like if you've ever done this in school, I've had a time or two where I've tried to do a project and a teacher was like, look, it's not perfect, but I liked your idea. And I like that you made the attempt to do something different because it doesn't look like everyone else's thing. That's what this movie is for me. The attempt was great. I like the idea of trying something different, but the execution of it kind of all over the place. You jump in timelines. Don't push the sexuality and the nudity so hard.
Which is weird because I love those 80s movies where, the slasher films with the women and the boobs and everything. It's like, that's all part of my culture that I started watching horror movies with and enjoying. But for some reason, it just didn't feel right in this movie.
Yeah, it was hyper sexualized in certain places. And
I still understand. I don't want to think about zombie sex. I don't know how it works. I don't understand why everything kind of grows back after they feast.
Yeah.
If their blood isn't pumping. If their blood isn't pumping, there's no way he can perform.
I'm telling you, man. Hard-hitting questions. We should put a poll, or you should put a poll out for your channel on Twitter and ask. That's awesome.
Because that whole there were so many things in this movie that didn't quite make a lot of sense.
Yep.
Like when she was, I'm into emo girls. I'll admit that.
Mm-hmm.
But when she was walking around that bar and everything, it seemed like every guy was into her. When she seemed to be wanting to be alone, and
that's a good point.
And I don't know if there's an attraction to the undead.
I don't understand. I don't know the underlying want there. But what's crazy too is like in this movie when she was human, she's a very cute like girl next door kind of deal. But they did a really good job. She looked like a homeless hobo when she was walking around, dirty sweatshirts and just picking stuff out and then glasses on. She definitely looked like a junkie. And I'm like,
and the guy that picked her up's like, "Oh, you're so beautiful." And then he's like, "Oh, you smell terrible." But they're already about to have sex, so it's like, I guess that didn't bother him.
He didn't care. You know what? That's where I give the ticket out to the best death. That creep got what he had coming to him. What a jerk that guy is.
There were some pretty cool details though, like when they had the thing where they were talking about how he was a married man and everything with kids, and you really kind of hammered home that the guy she killed wasn't a good guy. And that's kind of also what the blonde woman that saved her on the motorcycle, what she was telling her how she's going to live her life. So I guess it's better than kind of finding out that she killed someone who was a good person.
Mm-hmm.
But also a good person wouldn't have acted any of the ways that he was acting. So
I mean, I've been waiting to say this the entire thing. The moral of this story and this movie, guys, is don't do drugs.
Really? That's what you got?
No, it's if they wouldn't have done those drugs, they'd still be alive. But I just wanted to throw that.
Always get consent.
Yeah, that.
Whether you're doing drugs, whether you're having sex, whether you're murdering somebody. Because they might not want to be murdered.
It's literally in the title. Overall, man, I don't know if you're going to watch this. If we recommended this to a friend, I would say you better let your other peers know, or your significant other, or your friends, whoever. If you're going to watch this outside of alone, you better let them know this is going to get weird, and you might feel uncomfortable. That's the first thing I would say. Nothing about this film blew me away.
No,
but in the same breath, kind of being an oxymoron, I didn't hate it. I don't love it. I'm glad, like I said, to reiterate the point that they tried something different. And I'm glad for your sake, even though this movie was probably not our favorite or anything close to it on this channel, is we got to do a zombie movie because that's what they are. So I was happy to see that. That was kind of cool. But
we've been very lucky to watch some movies so far that have had excellent acting, amazing casting, great cinematography and everything. And after watching some of the movies that we've watched, this just didn't quite stack up. This is nothing against the cast of this movie, because I felt like the actors did a very good job of doing what they were asked to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it felt borrowed from so many different places.
Yeah.
That it, for an original concept, so much struggled to be original on its own, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And it's got that European flair too. Like we've noticed, it's no secret. America and Hollywood, they're the driving force in like new ideas and new movies and new technology. So things over in Europe and in the Western world or the Eastern world is like, they're going to be a little bit behind. So you see a couple of those little throwbacks here and there, but I think they focus too much on the things that didn't really matter in this movie. And we've hit home on those. We don't have to reiterate those, but I do like the actors in this movie. I think they did a good job. I don't know that the direction of this film was so wonderful. And the way it was pieced together, I'm not sure production wise that I'm dying to see anything else, but I would give them maybe one more chance, but they didn't start off on the best foot with me, with whoever directed this and produced it. But
so let's ask some questions here.
Mm-hmm.
Did you enjoy this movie?
It's the first one where I'm neutral. I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't hate it. We've had one on here that we've said this movie was terrible. Most of them have been, yes, I enjoyed it on some level. I'm 50-50 right in the middle. I really don't know how to feel about it. This one's weird, man.
I don't think I enjoyed watching this.
Yeah.
And
I can see it.
I wanted to like it because I love watching horror movies. And there have been some really good takes in the zombie genre that came out of nowhere. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger's Maggie. Have you seen that?
Great film.
So good, and it came out of nowhere.
I was shocked that he was in that.
So I was expecting something a little bit more emotionally driven like that, and I never got that emotionally invested in anything in this movie to make me really care about what was going on. I mean, at one point I thought I learned more and relate a little bit more to the zombie hunters than I did to her. And I shouldn't do that.
Right.
Because when he was there talking to her dad, saying like, well, you got to watch out for her daughter, because when she comes home, she's not going to be the daughter you knew. You can't, let her into your life. Call us immediately. And you're thinking he's looking out for the family. He's trying to save the people. He's the good guy. So we're actually watching this from like the bad guy perspective and trying to root for a bad guy against the people that are trying to save against the zombies, which in itself is a strange situation. So let's go one more on this. Would you recommend this movie to a friend?
Probably not.
I don't think I would either.
I would say if they're like, no, I watched your review, I want to see it for myself, I would go back to what we said 5 minutes ago. If you're going to watch it with your significant other or you're going to watch it with friends, if they make it through it, just know you're going to be uncomfortable at some point. It's kind of sloppy. And the more we talk about it, the more it's easier to explain. But this is like, with all the sex and everything, this is like a surface level movie. And when we watch horror, like you and I grew up in the slasher era, yeah, a lot of that stuff is cheesy, blah, blah, blah. But I want to feel something.
Yeah.
And you and I are different. For you guys, anybody that watches this, like I'm into the supernatural stuff. Some of my favorites are like The Conjuring or, Paranormal Activity, stuff like that. Adam's not really into that. But it makes me think a little bit. This movie didn't challenge my brain.
No,
it didn't. So just know when we give this a really bad review here in a second, that's kind of why. I didn't feel challenged with this pretty much at any point. And I'm like a base level horror fan, but I'm kind of like, yeah, this kind of sucked.
Yeah. And that's tough to say because, like I said, Netflix went out of their way to buy this movie, this Italian film, and put it out. They promoted it a little, but not too hard. And it seemed like they gave up on their promotion kind of easily. Now, when I started doing a little bit of scrolling, I kind of saw why. It is not a very well reviewed movie. It's a 4.3 out of 10 on IMDb. 45% of Google users liked it. So there must be something there that more people see than just us. That it's a good concept, but there's something missing. And we've watched movies before where there felt like there was just maybe one or two things missing to make it a great movie, and this one is missing quite a bit. And I don't think it knows what genre it wanted to be. I don't know if it wanted to be a kung fu movie at times, or if it wanted to be a heart-wrenching drama, a relationship drama. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the more we talk, the more I'm like dissecting the crap out of this movie. At times there, I felt like I was watching Twilight. And I was like, ew, that's not good.
Not
great.
Not there.
That's a very successful franchise, but it's not exactly our wheelhouse. But if you want to slap a number on it like we usually do, man, I'm going to be very brutal with this movie.
I'm going to compare it to a movie that I also felt took a nice little twist on the zombie genre and tried to do something different. But it was more of a cutesy one, this one. This one actually kind of reminded me in some ways of Warm Bodies.
I haven't seen that.
And I did not care for that for some of the same reasons I don't care for this one.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm hoping that there can be some more tries on the zombie genre that can maybe open things up a little bit more, make it a little bit refreshed, because as you guys all know, I'm a huge zombie fan. And traditionally they're cool. I'm fine with playing with the rules a little bit. But yeah, the whole eye drop zombie killer thing, just this one didn't do it for me.
Yeah, because originally the first thing that I had issues with in this movie was anything I've ever known about zombies. Now I will say it out there so it's in the universe and on a server forever and ever in time on YouTube. Me saying this, Adam is my go-to zombie person and expert. All right, I'm a base level at this, but I'll ask you the question because I want to hear it from the source. How do you become a zombie in any movie we've ever watched?
It's normally getting bitten by a zombie.
Not by a freaking drop that you put in your eye. That is the first thing that I was like, okay, I could see a drug overdose, but how does that make you want to eat humans after?
What that kind of reminded me of is, have you ever seen the 28 Days and 28 Weeks Later movies?
Yeah, the one with Josh Hartnett, correct?
Yeah, there's a scene where the guy looks up and there's the drop of blood coming off the rail and it falls in his eye. Mm-hmm. And he immediately becomes one of the rage. And it's to me, that transformation was more violent. And I felt like when they died, they skipped over like almost all of that moment of them dying. They could have gotten so much more passion out of it, with her clinging to him as they passed away, not just holding hands and dying. I mean, there were so many missed opportunities in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will throw a little bit of praise on it, because there were some scenes I really loved. Now, the blonde woman that saved her on the motorcycle, she was a surgeon, and the scene where she was picking out the bullets out of her back, those were cool. That was a cool scene. Very well done.
Very well done, and it shows the undead very well, because normally if you've seen a flesh wound of any kind that's even semi-traumatic, there's obviously red blood, there will be some scarring, some bruising, some inflammation. She was totally black, which I was like, that rocks. So I agree with you there. That was kind of cool. And yet again, in that scene, the lighting was crucial, because there was a dark blue or a light blue tint to there, some cool blue tint. And I was like, I kind of feel it now. I like that. That was good.
So yeah, there were positives for this movie. There definitely were, but I didn't feel it did enough to outweigh the other things from this movie. As you guys know, I grade on a scale from 0 to 100. I do school-based grades. So if you get like an 80, that's like the B range. 90 and up's an A. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually going to. I don't even know if I can give this a D. So I'll go 53.
Adam does the school rating. I'm a 1 to 10 guy. I'm gonna annihilate this movie. It's like a 3.5 at best. It's really bad. And what's great, what's crazy is like, I know we are kind of circling back and we say one thing maybe, and you gave praise right after we were kind of knocking it, but the actors were great. The lighting was good. I think the storyline has so many holes. It leaves you to be like, okay, don't leave this much up to interpretation while you try to explain it at the end. We already knew the explanation. You have to tell us, but don't drive it so home so much on the base level stuff, like the sexual stuff. And it had potential, but it was a missed opportunity. That's the best way to sum up this movie. Missed opportunities.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get a lot of views that people kind of click in to see what we thought of this movie, because I don't think that this is going to catch on in any way the way that some of the other movies that we've done have, whether it's Fear Street or Texas Chainsaw or whatever. I think this movie is probably going to sit on Netflix until it kind of fades away a little bit. But let's end this with one more question. Do you think this movie was done to set up a potential sequel or franchise?
I hope not. Oof. I mean,
because it feels that way.
It does feel that way. I could definitely see the opportunities for this, but I guess the only positive is, I mean, I say this, and of course it could get worse, but I feel like you can only go up from this. Because anybody that's got directing experience, anybody that has half the name, they could take this and be like, okay, there's a lot of things we could have fixed. Or
because now they could set up the boyfriend against the girlfriend, or they could do some movies where she's kind of learning her way. And I mean it set itself up for more movies like this if they wanted to do that. But with the poor critic review and just how it was received by Netflix and everything, I don't think it would be wise to start a franchise based on this.
Yeah, this was too poorly done. And to kind of drive it home, the big thing, especially in horror, is the sequels are never better than the first. Most of the time, right?
Yeah.
That means your original was awesome. I mean, you can take Halloween, Friday the 13th, Scream, all these classics that we love. But this one was bad. So I don't know how you would have stake to be like, it's kind of like an investment. If I walk in and I show you a product that's you have to be a part of, well, yeah, I'm going to invest in it. But if I am any kind of major corporation, like a Paramount or Universal or whoever, and
this was WB right here.
I don't know how I'd be like, yeah, that was great. Let's make another one.
Which WB again, not particularly known for this type of film.
Ugh.
But yeah, the way they spent so much time setting up the lore and what every zombie does and how the two sides go against each other, it really felt like they were trying to set up a franchise.
I hope not. Well, I can tell you now, if it comes down to it, I don't know that I would vote up. You guys can blame me for this terrible movie review because I picked it, but I'm not going to pick Don't Kill Me 2. I can promise you that.
Well, that's about as blunt of a review as you're going to get. So if you're listening to this over on YouTube or if you're live on our Twitch watching, I do want to thank you for joining us because we love doing these reviews and hopefully we can do another one soon. On behalf of me and Kyle, stay bloody, fans.